You think you know what love looks like. You probably picture grand gestures, big declarations, someone chasing you down the street in the rain. That is what movies taught you. But I am about to tell you something that will completely flip the way you see relationships. And if you have ever loved someone who is distant, guarded, or hard to read, this might be the most important thing you will ever hear. Here is the cold truth. The rarest thing an avoidant will ever do for you looks absolutely nothing like love. In fact, the first time it happens, you might not even notice it. You might brush it off. You might even feel underwhelmed. But what you just witnessed in that quiet, ordinary, almost invisible moment was something that person has probably never done for anyone, ever. And if you walk away from that without understanding what just happened, you will spend the rest of your life looking for something louder, something more obvious, something that looks more like love on the surface, but means far less in reality. Stay with me, because by the time you reach the middle of this, you are going to feel something shift inside you. You are going to start replaying moments with that person. And some of those moments are going to head very differently than they did the first time around. Before we go deeper, drop the word rare in the comments right now. If someone in your life has ever made you feel confused about whether they care, drop that word and make sure you are subscribed, because what comes next changes the way you read people forever. Now, let us talk about the avoidant mind. Not in a clinical textbook way, in a real human, messy way. Because understanding this person is the key to understanding why what they do for you is so much more significant than what most people will ever do. An avoidant did not wake up one day and decide to be closed off. That is not how it works. Something happened, usually early, very early. Maybe their emotions were dismissed when they were little. Maybe they reached for comfort and got silence instead. Maybe they learned through repeated experience that needing someone is dangerous, that vulnerability gets punished, that love comes with a price you cannot afford to keep paying. So, they adapted. The human brain is brilliant at adapting. What the avoidant developed was a system, an internal system designed to protect them from the pain of meeting someone who might not be there. They learn to self-regulate, to pull back before the pull-away happens, to leave first before they can be left, to minimize their own needs so thoroughly that eventually they almost stopped feeling those needs altogether. Almost, not completely. Because here is what nobody tells you about avoidance. Underneath all of that distance, underneath all of that self-sufficiency and the walls and the independence that look so effortless on the outside, there is a person who feels deeply, possibly more deeply than most people you have ever met. They just have a completely different relationship with those feelings. They do not wear them on the surface. They carry them in places they have never shown anyone. And that is exactly why what they do for the right person is so rare, because it is not natural for them. It does not come easy. Every single gesture, every single moment of openness costs them something, something real, something significant. While you might open up to someone the way you open a window, light and easy and automatic, they open up the way someone opens a door that has been sealed shut for decades. It requires effort. It requires trust. And for an avoidant, trust is the rarest resource in the world. So when I tell you that there are specific things an avoidant will do for someone they genuinely love, I need you to understand the weight of each one. I need you to understand that what looks small on the outside is seismic on the inside. Let us start with the one that almost everyone misses. They stay. That is it. They just stay. When things get emotionally heavy, when the conversation goes deeper than surface level, when you start talking about feelings or needs or the future, most avoidants do one thing instinctively. They leave. Not always physically. Sometimes they leave the room. Sometimes they leave emotionally. They go quiet. They change the subject. They suddenly remember something they have to do. Their entire nervous system is wired to create distance when closeness becomes too intense. But for you, they stayed. They sat in the discomfort. They did not run. Maybe they went quiet for a moment. Maybe they looked uncomfortable. Maybe you could see the effort it was taking them to not retreat. But they stayed. And that is not a small thing. That is everything. Because you have to understand what staying costs an avoidant. Their entire psychological architecture is designed around one thing: distance equals safety. So, when they choose closeness over safety, when they stay in a moment that every cell in their body is telling them to escape from, that is not just love. That is a person dismantling their own defense system piece by piece for you. And most people never get that from an avoidant. Most people get the disappearing act instead. Now, let us talk about something even more subtle. Something that requires you to pay very close attention because it happens quietly, and it is over before most people realize it was a gift. They remembered something small. You mentioned once, in passing, that you had a difficult relationship with your father growing up. You said it offhandedly. You did not make a big deal of it. You moved on to something else. 3 weeks later, they bring it up. Not dramatically. They just say something like, I was thinking about what you said about your dad. Are you okay? Or maybe you mentioned the food you love. Something obscure. Something you said once without even thinking. And weeks later, without any prompting, they got it for you. Or they texted you an article about it. Or they just said they saw it somewhere and thought of you. This is enormous, and here is why. Avoidants protect themselves by keeping things shallow. The more they know about you, the more attached they become. The more attached they become, the more vulnerable they are to being hurt. So, the self-protective thing to do is to not pay close attention, to not let the details of your life sink in, to stay just removed enough that losing you would not be catastrophic. When they remember the small things, they are showing you that they have let you in past the first wall, that they are not keeping you at arm's length emotionally anymore, that somewhere in their mind and heart you have become someone who matters enough to think about when you are not there. That is intimacy, real intimacy, and for an avoidant, it is one of the hardest things to allow. Let us keep going because the next one is something that often gets misread entirely. They tell you something they have never told anyone. It might seem ordinary. They might deliver it in a low, flat voice with no drama attached to it. They might say something like, I do not usually talk about this, and then say a thing that clearly carries years of weight. Maybe it is something about their childhood. Maybe it is a fear they have. Maybe it is a failure they have never admitted to. Maybe it is something they did that they are ashamed of. Maybe it is just a dream they have that they think sounds stupid. And then they look at you. And in that look, even if their face is still controlled, even if their voice is still even, you can feel the question underneath it. Is it safe? Did I just make a mistake by showing you this? The average person who has never studied the avoidant attachment style might hear that moment and think, okay, that is nice. They shared something personal. But you need to understand the magnitude of what just happened. An avoidant does not share vulnerably, not naturally, not without massive internal cost. Vulnerability for them is not a practice. It is a risk that their history has told them repeatedly is not worth taking. They took that risk with you. That means something profound. That means you are one of the very, very few people in their life who gets to see something real, something unguarded, something true. And if you responded with care when they did that, if you held that moment gently, if you did not make them feel foolish or exposed or too much, they filed that away, and it made it possible for the next wall to come down, however slowly. Now, let us talk about something that tends to confuse a lot of people in relationships with avoidance. And it confuses them because it looks like a problem when it is actually a sign. They got uncomfortable and told you about it, not dramatically, not with a fight or an explosion. They did not disappear for 3 days without explanation. They did not shut down completely. They actually said something like, I am feeling a little overwhelmed right now. Or maybe I need some space, but I do not want you to think it is about you. Or even just, this is hard for me. Do you understand how monumental that is? An avoidance default response to emotional overwhelm is to go silent and pull away without explanation. Because explaining requires vulnerability. Because saying I am overwhelmed means admitting that they have feelings, that you affect them, that they are not as invulnerable as they need the world to believe. It means dropping the mask, even for a moment. When they instead communicate that discomfort to you, rather than just acting it out through withdrawal, they are doing something incredibly difficult. They are trying. They are trying to do the relationship differently than their instincts are telling them to do it. They are choosing communication over escape. And that choice is not available to most avoidants, with most people. The fact that they are doing it with you means something. Here is another one that is almost universally missed. They showed up when you needed them, even when it was inconvenient. Avoidants are not great with other people's emotional needs, not because they do not care, but because emotional need activates something in them. It creates a pressure they are not comfortable with. When someone is sad or scared or falling apart, the avoidant instinct is usually to offer a solution or change the subject, or simply disappear until the storm passes. Getting too close to someone else's pain feels threatening. It requires emotional presence. And emotional presence is the thing they have spent a lifetime guarding against. So, when you called them crying and they stayed on the phone, when you were sick and they came over even though they had other plans, when you were having the worst day of your life and they set aside whatever armor they normally wear and just sat with you in it, do not file that under ordinary. There is nothing ordinary about that. That required them to override their most deeply ingrained protective responses. It required them to tolerate their own discomfort in order to prioritize yours. That is a choice they make consciously, even if it looks effortless on the outside, because nothing about it is effortless for them. And the next one. This one is very particular to avoidance, and it is something you might have noticed without realizing what it meant. They initiated. They reached out first. They texted first. They made the plan. They said, "Let us do this. Let us go there. Let us spend time together," without you prompting it, without you making it clear you wanted it. They just reached out because they wanted to. For the anxiously attached person, or even the securely attached person, initiating feels natural. You feel something, you act on it, you miss someone, you text them. Simple for the avoidant. Initiating is an admission. It is an admission that they want something from you, that they need connection with you, that you are not interchangeable, that losing you would matter. And every single one of those admissions makes them vulnerable in ways that feel genuinely dangerous to their system. So, they hold back. They wait. They tell themselves they are just giving you space. But what they are really doing is protecting themselves from the risk of reaching out and being rejected, or worse, being absorbed. Because intimacy for an avoidant is both what they want and what they fear most in the world. When they initiate, they are choosing desire over fear. They are saying, even though this scares me, I want to be close to you more than I want to stay safe. That is not nothing. That is the entire thing. Let us go a little deeper now, because I want to talk about something that happens in fights, in conflicts, in the moments where relationships are really tested. They came back to the conversation. When conflict happens, avoidants classically do one thing. They shut down. They go quiet. They need to get away from the emotional intensity, and they often have no idea when or if they are coming back. Some people wait days for a response that never comes. Some people watch the avoidant in their life turn a moment of connection into a week of cold silence with no explanation. But for you, they came back. Maybe it took a while. Maybe they needed some time to regulate. But they came back and they said something. Something like, "I have been thinking about what happened." Or, "I handled that badly." Or even just, "Can we talk about this?" An avoidant returning to repair a rupture is extraordinarily rare, because returning means engaging again with the thing that was emotionally overwhelming in the first place. It means risking another round of feelings they do not know how to sit with. It means admitting that the relationship matters enough to fix. And all of those things together represent a level of emotional courage that most avoidants have never demonstrated for anyone. If they do that with you, if they come back and try to repair, you are witnessing something almost no one in their life has ever seen. Now, I want to talk about something that lives in the quietest part of this whole dynamic. Something that does not look like love until you understand the language it is being spoken in. They made future plans with you. Small ones. Nothing that had to be big. Maybe they said, "We should go there sometime." Maybe they mentioned something in a few months and naturally included you in it. Maybe they said, "When we do this together," thinking ahead to a time that assumed you would still be there. The avoidant mind lives in the present, partly because the present is safe. The future requires commitment. The future requires believing that the relationship will still exist, still be wanted, still be worth investing in. And betting on the future means betting on someone else. It means allowing hope. And hope for someone who has been let down enough times is one of the scariest things in the world. When an avoidant starts including you in their future, even casually, even in small ways, They are doing something internally enormous. They are letting you exist in their mind beyond right now. They are allowing themselves to want more time with you. And that level of openness about wanting is something their system has spent years trying to close off. Hold that, because it is a gift even when it sounds ordinary. Let us talk about something else that often goes unrecognized. They defended you, not necessarily in a loud or dramatic way. Maybe someone said something unkind about you, and they said, "No, that is not true." Or maybe they spoke up for you in a situation where staying quiet would have been easier. Or maybe they just made clear to someone in their world that you matter to them, that you are not just someone they are seeing, that your name comes with weight. Avoidants are usually very careful about what they reveal about their feelings, about their relationships, about what they care about. Because revealing what you care about gives people leverage, and giving people leverage is one of the most threatening things an avoidant can imagine. If people know what you love, they know where to hurt you. So, when they claim you, when they stand up for you, when they make your value to them visible in any way, they are taking a risk, a real one. They are saying, "This person is mine to protect, and I am willing to be seen saying so." That is an enormous act of trust, not just in you, but in the relationship itself. And this next one might be the most profound of all, because it is the one that most people overlook completely. They let you see them struggle. Not the polished version, not the competent, self-sufficient, everything is fine version. They show the world the real one, the one that did not know how to handle something, the one that felt lost, the one that had a hard day, and for once did not pretend that it was fine. Maybe they said, "I do not know what to do." Maybe they just seemed sad, and for the first time they did not immediately put on the mask. Maybe they said, "I am not okay right now," and they let you see that without immediately shutting it back down. For an avoidant, appearing weak or uncertain is one of the most threatening experiences possible, because their entire identity is built around not needing anyone, around being capable and independent and immune to the emotional chaos that seems to bring other people to their knees. That image is not vanity. It is armor. It is the thing standing between them and the vulnerability that once got them hurt. So when they lay that armor down, even briefly, even imperfectly, and let you see what is underneath it, you are seeing the truest version of them. The version that exists before all the protection goes up. The version that they have probably spent decades keeping hidden, and they showed it to you on purpose. Or maybe not even on purpose, which is even more meaningful, because it means they felt safe enough with you that the armor slipped without them planning it. That is love in the avoidant language, and it is the rarest sentence in their vocabulary. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because this would not be complete without it. Understanding all of this does not mean accepting everything. It does not mean excusing the disappearances or the shutdowns or the moments where they went cold when you needed them to be warm. Loving an avoidant does not require becoming a saint. It requires clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from understanding what is actually happening beneath the surface of the behavior that confuses or hurts you. When they pulled away after getting close, it was not rejection. It was fear. When they went quiet after a good date, it was not indifference. It was overwhelm. When they seemed to push you away, right when things were getting real, it was not because you were too much. It was because they were feeling too much, and they did not know how to hold it without shutting down. None of that means you should tolerate being treated poorly. None of that means you should make yourself small to accommodate their fear. What it means is that you now have the ability to see the difference between someone who is unable to love and someone who is doing the hard, terrifying, slow work of learning to love in a way they were never taught. And that is a crucial distinction, because giving up on the first is wisdom. But walking away from the second without recognizing what you had, that is a loss you might not fully understand until much later. There are people walking around right now who let go of someone who was doing all of these things, who was staying even though every part of them wanted to flee, who was remembering the small details even though closeness scared them, who was initiating even though vulnerability terrified them, who was initiating even though vulnerability terrified them, who was coming back to repair even though returning to conflict felt unbearable, who was letting their armor slip even though exposure felt like the most dangerous thing they had ever done. And those people thought they were being overlooked. They thought they deserved more. And maybe in some ways they were right. But they did not recognize what they had. They did not know the language it was being spoken in. You know it now. So here's the question that matters, and I want you to sit with it for a moment before you answer. Is there someone in your life who has been doing these things quietly, who has been staying even when staying was hard, who has been showing up in ways that looked small, but now through everything you have just heard, look enormous? Who has been speaking in a language you were not quite fluent in before today? If there is, you now have a choice that you did not have before. The choice to recognize what you are being given. The choice to meet that person with the same patience and presence they have been extending to you in the only way they know how. The choice to stop waiting for the grand gesture and start receiving the quiet, costly, extraordinarily rare thing that is actually being offered. Because here is the final truth, and this is the one that stays with you. People love in the language they were given. And some people were given a very limited vocabulary for it. But they are using every word they have, every single one for you. And if you can hear that, if you can really hear it, that changes everything. You have been carrying a question about someone, about whether they really love you, about whether it is real, about whether what you are experiencing is enough. And I hope something in this shifted the way you hold that question, not by lowering your standards, but by expanding your understanding of what love can look like when it comes from someone who learned very early that love was not safe. The rarest thing an avoidant will ever do for you is choose you over their own fear, over and over again, in ways so quiet you almost did not see them. But they were there. They have always been there. And now, you can see them for what they are. Do not let that person go without understanding what they were giving you. Do not let the silence fool you into thinking nothing was being said. And do not let the ordinary moments pass without recognizing the extraordinary courage it took for them to show up in them. Because for someone who learned that love was dangerous, reaching for it anyway is the bravest thing in the world. And if they are reaching for you, that means something deep and rare and worth understanding, worth choosing, worth staying for. If you are someone who has felt this way, who has loved someone quiet and guarded and difficult to read, share this with them. Not as a message, not as a hint, just share it. Because sometimes people do not know they are being seen until someone shows them the mirror. And if this opened something up for you today, if it made you see someone differently, if it made you see yourself differently, you already know what to do. Stay curious about the people who are hard to read. They usually have the most to say.